in 2008 and the bombings in 2011, the 3 different bombs, and all that is done by LET. And LET goes way back in time, 35 years as far as that goes. But it's this kind of need to, this will of the Pakistani people to regain the Kashmir that allows this whole drug network to happen. This is the narco-terrorism. This is where you're kind of making moral trade-offs, saying, well, it's okay when people come in with the food stamps cards, and it's okay when they come in with the welfare cards to trade their cards for drugs, because that money, you know, I'm a rich businessman, I live well, flamboyantly, but I'm sending a lot of it back to the homeland to regain that piece of property. And so that's the kind of the rationalization that goes on. So here we have customers going in there. These are people who are on assistance, don't have enough to eat. They're giving the card, let's say it's a $500 card, they're getting $250 back. So what Javed was doing was a 50% scheme. So you have to give your card, you get 250 bucks back. Then the owners of the convenience stores, there was 11 of them, 20 people arrested in all. Then they would go to Sam's Club and buy stuff for their stores. So they would immediately make 50% profit, but then they would also mark up the beer and the wine and all the other items, the cigarettes and so forth, so they would make even more than 50%. So it's almost tripling their money. So that's why this scheme is so attractive to families that are trying to get their kids through a good law school. And you can see here, you know, this is Alabama step forward, but I guarantee you every state where he has Starco, import-export with his convenience stores, they are running this 50% scheme. All 12 of these stores and all 20 of these people didn't just think that up for themselves one day. They were told and given a modus operandi and so forth. Now the other person you might recognize, well, and here's Riceland Hospice. Some people said, oh, he doesn't own hospice. He doesn't own palliative care like the scheme that was run in Michigan. Well, no, that's not my logo. That's his logo. The other thing is, well, Riceland, you know, you called out Riceland Hospital. You said they, you know, didn't do mental health stuff and so forth. Oh, yeah, they do. There it is right there. There's their own commercial. I took that off their own website. Behavioral health is the top thing that's listed. And these pain chains that I talked about earlier, these retail pain clinics, are going to be a big part of the Riceland network as well. You may notice this guy, Nick Lampson. He was a congressman. I think he won 4 or 5 terms in Congress. And you can see him here hosting this event where Hillary got $400,000. There was 6 people in the audience in this little stop of Beaumont, Texas. So he was the largest contributor to Hillary last year. Well, you might remember Nick Lampson from starting the caucus in the Republican House for missing and exploited children. He was the guy who started that caucus. That caucus was primarily responsible for the Amber Alert system. The knock, of course, on the Amber Alert system is it's good at finding ambers, but it doesn't send out too many alerts. A lot of people think that is the exact system that has been used by people in the network to find missing and exploited children to exploit them for trafficking, unfortunately. So we'll come back to Nick Lampson and some of the scandals that he's had a little bit later. But we visited, I went to the office of Muslim Wanafar. I talked about the Beaumont doctors. It's a Beaumont doctor network. Now, I'm not just talking about Beaumont Hospital, you know, in Canada and Michigan and so forth. I'm talking about a national network of Beaumont doctors that referring physicians know to send people to as far as pain clinics to make sure, this is a network to make sure that you're feathering the nest of the national interest here. And the national interest here is, you know, Pakistani pride, let's regain Kashmir and so forth. Again, that's why people do things like run drugs from Pakistan to Turkey. This is Reza Zarab, the bag man for Gulen. That's how you end up with $43 billion in Malaysian banks in Kuala Lumpur. You also have the Molan doctors with the longer term strategy, which is addict the population on both legal and illegal drugs, as well as the drugs to get off the drugs, like Suboxone and Methadone, creating a whole class of Methadone addicts, a whole class of Suboxone addicts, and all these drugs being provided offshore by Pakistan. Again, a greater Pakistan. Now, again, I'm not, oh, one other thing I want to change here is feta. I've been saying feta Gulen to be simple. You can see it's Fethullah Gulen. But our friend Erdogan certainly thinks that feta Gulen caused the recent coup last year. He's changed this feta to F-E-T-O, all capital letters, and he has labeled the Gulen movement in Turkey as a terrorist organization. So it's not me saying Fethullah Gulen is a terrorist. It's the person who knew him for 20 years and who worked side by side with him for 20 years. So if he thinks he's a terrorist, maybe there's some validity to that. Again, this is the Graham Fuller plan, the Russia plan. It's just been horribly perverted to be used now in sort of a kind of a turning the tables against very militant radical Islam against the people of the United States for their involvement in the war in Pakistan and Afghanistan. So I'm going to connect the dots here with the Javed brothers. The Javed brothers establishing the largest Medicare fraud. Also, this Dr. Fattah is this Lebanese doctor, the Dr. Death, and so forth. I don't have time today to connect all those dots, but I will just say that this is coming. I'm going to bring all this together in future episodes. Again, ties to terrorism is your key link, and then fake billing are two key signatures. Fake billing, collapsed businesses, unpaid bills, bankruptcies, and again, any kind of child trafficking and also organ harvesting. And Al-Attar was the key. And also, I don't mean to say that the DO, the fake doctor, doctors of osteopathy are not fake doctors, but they do have to only go 1/4 of the time, and it's about 1/4 of the cost. So you can give yourself a doctor title very easily, or you could become a PhD online at one of the online universities and then start calling yourself doctor, not calling yourself PhD. People don't know the difference. Again, I'm going to connect this Javed to the transplant doctors. A whole set of it started in Kosovo and then moved around again through the insurgency, to Libya, to Syria, to Central America, to Mexico, but then to the United States. I just don't have time in this one here. I talked about the rice yesterday. I talked about Adila rice. I talked about Nanoset technology spinning off spin-offs about every 5 years to sell off intellectual property from hacking. And then I'll have more time in the future to talk about how these different biology companies as well as satellite technology companies get these spin-offs. This Awan Brothers is just this general holding company for spinning off hacking espionage. So I talked about this yesterday, Adil rice. This is the area I was speaking of. This is the Kashmir, and Pakistan only controls this thin strip. And the national goal of that LET is to regain this area. And all this drug trade, all the these compromises that people are making with their life and their morals is because of this national pride here. It's almost like if somebody took part of Texas and we said, you know, let's fund a movement like going back to Andrew Jackson to take Texas. You know, that's kind of where they are and how they feel about this area here. Again, the private airport, there's another one, I won't go into her name. She's a very high key minister. She was involved in an inquiry last year of all these plane flights down to Karachi from this little town here where this rice mill is. Again, this is the only private airport. She had to resign. The government found that there was no, they dropped the case on her. I won't go into that doctor's name, but that's the rat line, is from this little town here on the border where the quote-unquote rice mill is down to Karachi for shipment. Now, the New Dawn, I believe, I'll just say this, New Dawn was a switch here because instead of going all the way to Karachi, they stopped in Lahore and then flew directly to Chicago O'Hare, and that considerably cut the time down on the rat line. It also turns around money faster when you do that, and there's less hands that touch the rice or less hands that touch the mangoes, and therefore you have new profits. So I believe that's what the New Dawn Corporation is. It's stuffing the mangoes like Lucky Luciano did with the oranges for fewer, untouched by human hands, high profit, high cash turnaround. And what else does the Awan brothers share with the Javed brothers? Well, they share murder. They had people murdered. They once had, obviously, this used car dealer murdered. They also were able to threaten people in Pakistan with, well, I'll go to the next slide. This is their Pakistan 111th military training slide, but they threatened people here in the United States. They were also able to threaten the relatives of the stepmother in Pakistan. So